Hello there, you're listening to The Student Theologian with another My Thoughts On episode. A little bit late, but not too late. I haven't been as late as I usually am when it comes to uploading these episodes. But if you haven't noticed, I have not been on social media for about, 3 or 4 days now. So I gave up social media just for the summer because I want to get back to reality when it comes to detaching myself from the social media landscape. I want to be able to spend my free time in the summer just refocusing on myself and on my relationship with God, just getting back to reading, doing devotionals, quiet time. And it's not as if I can do these things and still use social media, but it's also good to take a step back from social media as well to avoid all the arguments, just the toxicity and the comparisons that we often build based on social media. And I've actually watched a lot of What If Balti's videos on this, where he talks about us being addicted to our screens and how that's having a bad effect on us. And so I think it's good for us every now and then to kind of take a break from social media. I'm going to try to manage my screen time in general as a whole too. And also need to manage my video game time, which the only video games I play anymore are online strategy games. So I'm hoping to limit that over the next couple of months. I want to go do hiking and fishing and stuff, so I want to get back to enjoying nature, enjoying God. I think that's going to be the main focus of my summer. That and work. I go to a full-time schedule starting this week, so that's going to be interesting. I'm going to earn more money, so that's nice. But I've been really liking my job that I've done over the last month, and I think it's almost a month I've been there. But yeah, I've enjoyed it so far. My customers are a lot nicer doing pest control work than they were when I was doing restaurant work. So that's been a plus. Plus there's more earning potential with this job, so that's going to be nice. I'm going to have to retake my Greek course. I fell behind, I couldn't catch up, and it's unfortunate, but that's what life is right now. I'm going to still stick with this because I don't see myself doing anything other than ministry. I'm going to have to start taking my classes online. I should be able to pass this Greek class pretty easily the second time around. I should have done more studying beforehand. But life goes on. So there's a plethora of topics I want to talk about today. I have a little note here of these bullet points that I want to talk about. So, my pastor actually brought up, he was talking about biblical masculinity, how that looks different from the world, and how the world views masculinity. And he said that we've gone off two extremes. The left wing totally wants to crush masculinity, essentially turning us into feminine men. And it sees masculinity in itself as a problem. They see the patriarchy as a problem. Whereas God has established the patriarchy. He has established masculinity. So these are good things that are based in reality. Now on the other hand, there's influencers on the right who have embraced a false sense of masculinity. I think Andrew Tate says a lot of good things when it comes to when he bashes feminism, but his hedonistic approach I don't think is biblical, and he doesn't claim that it is. In fact, I don't think he claims to be a Christian at all, unfortunately, and I hope he becomes one someday and marries and discovers the joy that is found only in Christ. But I think we need to see the problems in both sides. What is hedonism? This is an approach that basically says since life has no greater purpose, your greatest purpose should be pleasure, just sleeping with all these women and getting all these nice cars, learning MMA and stuff, and riches and the MMA training. Those aren't inherently sinful, and sex is not sinful as if it's inside the context of a marriage. So these aren't bad things in of themselves, but they're bad if we misuse them, or if we try to find our ultimate purpose in these things. And I think that's where Andrew Tate gets his stuff wrong. Now, Andrew Tate does also get a lot of things right. He talks about being a man and how important it is for men to do men things like fighting. He was a very good kickboxer. When he talks, he has some uploads where he talks about fighting stances, and one of the things that stuck out to me, because this is something that Teddy Roosevelt would have taught as well, that you have to get inside the arena as a man. You should point to some point in your life where you've gotten into a fight. Not a street fight. You want to stay away from that. Those are dangerous. I've been in those, unfortunately. But I think what Andrew Tate is talking about is a friendly competition where two guys put the boxing gloves on, if you need it, put the helmets on, and just fight some. I've done sparring with my friend. I've done jiu-jitsu with my friends. I've taken a lot of hits to the head. I've punched a lot, and I tell you, it's a lot funner punching than it is getting punched. But I think that's an important part of being a man, of growing up as an adult. And I want to get back to learning MMA stuff. I don't know if I'm going to be able to manage that anytime soon, unfortunately. If I want to do that, it would probably have to be in the summer, so I'd have to get on that soon to see if I can find some place that's affordable that would allow me the chance to train at least a couple of times a week. I believe that would be a lot funner than just burning myself out in the gym 4 or 5 times a week. I would still go to the gym sometimes, but probably not as much if I was learning MMA or boxing. So I went off a tangent there, but I think that's how we should, as Christians, approach Andrew Tate. We should approach him with the understanding that he's not a Christian, that his overarching worldview is incorrect because it's not based on the Bible. But he does say some good things. And the fact that Andrew Tate has this sway over all these young men just shows that the church has failed to attract young men. We've failed to teach men how to be men, so much so that people like Andrew Tate can come in, replace the church as that role model, as that teacher to young men. And I think that's the ultimate thing that we have to get back to as a church. Big evangelism has to go out and recruit young men and tell them to be men. Stop bashing them in the head with this soft dribble feminism, and stop trying to get them to be lowly, meek, weak. Start telling them to be rough, coarse, strong. Tell them to be courageous, brave, and encourage masculinity. Don't discourage it. I feel like big evangelism, big Eva is appealing to females more than it is men. And I think that's a mistake, because young men are more drawn to the church in this modern era than women are. And because of that, we're still losing men to traditional Catholicism and Eastern Orthodoxy, because these are seen as more masculine denominations than most Protestant churches are, unfortunately. So I think that we need to change that. We need to start recruiting young men harder as Protestants, and we need to start teaching them how to be masculine men, biblically based masculine men. And my church does that really well. The Reformation church I went to, at the singles mixer, they do a good job of that as well. I'm sure that a lot of reformed churches or reformed light churches do that well, because it seems like the Reformed theology is one of the ideologies that young men are drawn to. That, and like I said earlier, traditional Catholicism and Eastern Orthodoxy. So these are the big three, I feel like, religious ideologies that men are drawing to, that are growing in young men, and that's Catholicism, Eastern Orthodoxy, and Reformed churches. And I'm not just being biased, but I think the Reformed churches have the correct theology, much more than the other two. So we should be serious about this, and we should be able to outdraw the Catholics and the Eastern Orthodox, because we have the theological high ground. We have sola scriptura. And if young men are serious about their faith, about Christianity, they're going to see our theological groundwork that's framed on the Bible, and they're going to be going to our churches. And that's the idea. So that was one point that I wanted to make about how to approach Andrew Tate as a Christian. And I want to talk next about Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson, he's made some really dumb comment over, I think this is a couple of weeks ago now. I'm just making a video about this, so other new events are going to pop up soon, and then I'm not going to make a video about them until 2 weeks from now, because that's unfortunately where I'm at, and I don't have the time to make weekly podcast episodes. Now, I will be giving my tier list for the U.S. presidents. I saw Mr. Z do this, or Monsieur Z do this, and I want to do my own list. So be on the lookout for that as well. That's probably going to come sometime this week. So, Tucker Carlson, what did he say? Well, I've mentioned on my podcast before that Tucker Carlson is unfortunately favorable to Islam, much more favorable to Islam than most Christians are. And he said that Muslims love Jesus. He said this as a knock on Judaism, where he thinks that Judaism doesn't like Jesus. But I think the right wing right now is caught up in between Islam or Judaism, where you have to pick a side between both of them, but they're both garbage religions that don't truly love Christ. Because how can you love Jesus and deny his divinity? Jesus throughout the Gospels affirms he and the Father are one. Jesus said that before Abraham was, I am. This was him declaring that he is of God, the same nature of God. And yet the Muslims and the Jews both deny this. And the Muslims don't even tolerate Christians in their country. Like, there's of course been persecution from Israel when it comes to them persecuting Christians. Like, they don't allow street preaching over there. But in Muslim countries, the persecution is even worse. In Muslim-dominated countries, Christians are killed or imprisoned. And if anyone converts to Christianity from Islam, they're ostracized from their society at best, or killed at worst. And this is the case in every single era of Islamic domination. And before the Crusades, the Muslims would kidnap Christians, collect these fees from Christians, they enslaved Christians. And so this is not a new phenomenon. Muslims have always done this. They've always been a religion of extremists, murderers, fanatics that are going out there slaughtering everyone who disagrees with them. Now, do I support Israel? Of course not. Because I don't think they're any better than these Muslim countries. And I think that we need to stop trying to pick a side between two bad choices. I think the system has grown this in us since we're kids by making us pick between Republicans and Democrats, picked between this side and this other side. And we're doing this right now between Israel and Palestine, where we're forced to choose between two bad choices. I support the Palestine Christians who are legitimately just trying to live in peace. I support the rights of Palestinian Muslims to live without being persecuted for their faith as well. I support the rights of Jews in that area to live their lives without being bombed by terrorists. But I think both sides are wrong in their governments, at least. And for the most part, I think that Jews and Muslims really don't like each other, really don't tolerate each other in these societies. And I think Tucker Carlson should know better than to say that Muslims love Jesus, because they really don't. They may try to uphold him as some kind of prophet, but how are you going to uphold Jesus as a prophet and then just kill all of his followers? That doesn't make any sense to me. And if you uphold Jesus as a prophet, then but you don't uphold him as the Messiah, then you're essentially saying he's a liar, so he's a lying prophet, or he's a crazy prophet. And in that case, if you believe that, you wouldn't truly love Jesus either. But that's why both Islam and Judaism are wrong. And at the end of the day, if a Jew or a Muslim does not repent of their sins and believe in Christ, then they will go to hell together. Jesus is not picking a side. God is not picking a side between Islam or Judaism. Jesus already picked one side, and that's through him to see the Father. And he makes this clear in the Gospel of John when Jesus says that he is the only way to the Father. This means there's no Jewish way to heaven, there's no Islamic way to heaven, there's no other way by heaven except through the Son. And I think that Tucker Carlson, being a professing Christian, he needs to understand that. And I hope that he stops simping so hard for Muslims who would literally kill him if he was living in their country. So, I just think he's leaned so far into the Jew-hating thing that it's kind of blinded him at some points, at some levels. And that's unfortunate, because I do like Tucker Carlson. I agree with like 80% of his content. But the 20% that I disagree with on would be the Muslim simping stuff that he does. So, to summarize, don't choose between Judaism or Islam. Choose Christ. Now, so there was this other viral event that happened a couple of weeks ago, and I've been off social media for the last couple of days, so I don't know if this story is still going around, if people are still commenting on it. But there's the question of surrogacy. There was this picture that went viral of this little kid, this little baby, and he was adopted by these gay men, and the baby naturally cried for its mama. The gay guy said there was no mama, and it was just like the most depressing image ever of this kid who's going to have to grow up without knowing a mom. And I know from experience how hard and difficult that is. And he's going to have two men who try to lead him. Do you think these gay men are going to lead this child and grow him into an adult who's going to understand and have a good view of masculinity? Of course not. And this is what annoys me about like Christian libertarians or even conservatives, because they want to just tolerate this stuff. They say we can't force them. We can't stop gay people from adopting, because that would be authoritarianism. Well, I think we need to stop gay people from adopting. I would question the entire surrogacy program at its very core. I think the only instance where surrogacy should be allowed is if a family of a man and woman who have a solid record, who can pass a background check. If they're like physically unable to have children, then I don't know, maybe that would be an option in that case. But I think that surrogacy should be a lot more rare, and it should not be normalized, because what you're doing is essentially buying and selling babies. And this kind of makes sense once you realize that the entire Democratic platform for the continued allowance of abortion is the fact that they believe that babies are not actually humans. This is the same platform that Democrats had in the 1860s when when they were defending slavery. They didn't think that black people were actually human. And now, 2026, they don't think that human babies are human. And this is a part of the left wing's agenda that I think is most demonic. The fact that they're animalizing humans and humanizing animals. And I'm going to get into this later when I read this section from Romans chapter 1. But the left has built a society that's kind of the inverse of God's created order. And as a matter of fact, since I'm already on this topic, I am going to read this passage from Romans chapter 1. Okay, so starting in verse 21. For although they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks to him, but they became futile in their thinking, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Claiming to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images resembling mortal men and birds and animals and creeping things. So having this view of worshiping the creation instead of the creator isn't a new concept. This is the religion that the mainstream media, that the neoliberal order since the end of World War II has created. It's a nihilistic system that instead of worships God, it worships the creation itself. And they've gotten to a point where they don't even worship man. Instead they place animals up on a pedestal and almost worship them instead. And it's like they've created a society that is the inverse of how God created Adam and Eve. They've tried to place women in these positions of power over men. They encourage men to be feminine, weak, passive, and they encourage women to be strong leaders. And that's the inverse of what God intended. So, of course, that's why our society is in immoral decay. That's why we're drowning in our own decadence as a society. And that's why our birth rates are collapsing. And it all just stems from this pre-war consensus that if we ever allow the right wing to control the society, morality, then we're going to get another Hitler. That's essentially the post-war consensus. And Nick Fuentes talks about this quite a lot. But that's the left-wing fear. And it's an irrational fear, of course. Because every society, every civilization that has had any level of success has understood the basic reality that men should lead. Women should be women should be caretakers of the home. Children should obey their parents. And we should have dominion over animals. But the left tries to inverse this. And I got another example. There was this outrage recently when scientists have discovered that lobsters actually feel pain, which I don't endorse animal abuse. Like, if you're going to cook a lobster, kill it first. Don't boil it alive. However, it's kind of ironic that the left would be so outraged over animal abuse when these people defend abortion. Like, you don't think a unborn baby would feel pain and suffer after having their brain squashed in by these tools that these abortion doctors use? Like, how are you going to stand up for animals more than you would humans? And that's because we're entering an era of extreme liberalism where the sanctity of human life is not even respected. Like, we've gotten to the point where the left wants to kill you and then mock your grieving widow. And, ironically, I'm wearing the Charlie Kirk shirt, so he was one person who the left enjoyed killing, unfortunately, and that's the kind of normalized behavior that we're having on the mainstream left. And I think that because Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, before he helped make a really good decision that we're going to be talking about after this, he says that leftism is an existential threat. And that's what he's talking about, because the liberals, when they take power, they're not content with letting and let live. They're not content with allowing people who disagree with them to exist in a free society. They're not willing to engage with people who disagree with them. And I'm speaking in general terms. But the amount of celebration and joy that the left had when Charlie Kirk was killed is just revealed the darkness of their own hearts. And we as Christians, we should pray for these people, while still treating leftism as a disease, as something that we have to fight against. And that then Christian preachers of all denominations need to condemn leftism, condemn progressivism and feminism. We need to not be afraid to fight against these people. Don't be afraid to use your power in politics. Push Christian men in politics to get them to lead the nation towards a Christian society, because that's what we want to build. Christian nationalism has to be the future, because we've tried to build a secular society that allows for everything under the sun, and it didn't work. It's been failing to work ever since the end of World War II, essentially. The more tolerant that the Christian right has grown, the more degeneracy, the more evil, the more wicked that the society has become. Just look at Hollywood, for example. Hollywood used to just tell the basic stories of good versus evil. Now they want to blur the lines and just show a bunch of degenerate filth. And again, it's just this overall, it's because we've been so tolerant of evil for far too long. We need to get back to the point of us actually building a Christian nation and not being afraid to fight this culture war. Don't let big evangelicalism convince you that we should sit on the sidelines for the culture war, because we shouldn't. Okay. Speaking of not sitting on the sidelines, if there's one person in America who's not sitting on the sidelines, it's Clarence Thomas. And he is a Supreme Court justice, probably my favorite Supreme Court justice that I've had, especially in my lifetime, for sure. He's my favorite justice. So he and 5 other Supreme Court justices have eliminated race-based districts. And the idea of race-based districts was stupid to begin with, because the left simultaneously told us 2 things. They said, oh, race isn't a thing, but we're also going to create race districts. So how are you going to tell us that race doesn't exist and also create all these race-based districts? Well, that's because they knew that because of the welfare state, because of how the majority of the black community votes, unfortunately, that if you create these black-only districts, that's just votes for the Democrat Party. And they understood this. The Democrats, they don't play. They cheat, they lie, they steal, they do whatever they can to get power and keep power. And allowing all these race-based districts is exactly in their game plan. And that's how they were able to get so many congressional districts to begin with. Race-based districts never should have existed. Districts should be based on the geographic location. That would make a lot more sense. You could draw up easy maps all across America just based on geographic location, and that would be fair to everyone. But instead, they circle places on the maps where the ghettos exist, and they just look at the race. And it's totally preposterous that we allowed that to happen for decades before it was actually challenged in court. But now that's over with. Now we are going to be able to get out all these districts that should never have been allowed in the first place. Like, it's not that Republicans are cheating to win elections. We're actually eliminating the fraudulent elections that we've been allowing for decades. Like, civil rights was not invented. Martin Luther King did not walk on Washington just to see race-based districting. Just like he did not do all of that to see black-only schools or black-only pools or water fountains. So, And I think that the reason that the left being upset at this Supreme Court decision just exposes how much race plays a part in their ideology more than it does on the right. Now, speaking of race ideology, that brings us to our next topic. The SPLC. I think that I said that right. They've been caught funding the KKK in order to orchestrate hate crime, basically. So it's just ironic how all these things are being exposed on the left. That just shows them as complete hypocrites. They're over here funding the KKK, doing all these race districting, and then at the same time they're trying to call us on the right a bunch of racist neo-Nazis. I mean, it's just absurd. The demand for racism is so low in America that the left had to literally pay in order to get that to happen. But that's because without racism, the left would lose a significant portion of their ideology. They need racism to exist. They need white people to be the villains of their story. And if white people are virtuous, good, then that doesn't help their cause. So they have to pay white people, particularly the KKK, to do all these hate crimes and stuff. And we've been saying this for years. We've seen some of these neo-Nazi organizations for years now, and I've been under the impression that a lot of them were being paid by the feds or by some kind of left-wing organization, and now we have validation. Alex Jones has predicted a lot of this as well, and he's been proven right on so much lately. So the left needs to stop being racist and just let racism die. Okay. So speaking of the race thing, I guess we're going to keep going with this topic since it's on another topic that I have written down here. White genocide, is it happening? Yes and no. Both. I can see both sides of the argument. Now, I think that's problematic, white birth rates, especially when we look at Europe, America, Australia. I mean, it seems like all across the Western civilization that birth rates have gotten low, and it's dangerous. It's a dangerous trend. We need to fight against it. We need a government that encourages raising kids, having families. And you do that by doing a lot of things that I don't have the time to comment on now. But I think we need to have a government that takes seriously the issue of the low birth rates. And all of Europe needs those kind of leaders. Australia needs those kind of leaders. Canada, America. But I think we need to remember that before we get too black-pilled over this issue of white genocide, I see people all the time on X, on Facebook saying, "Oh, we're going to be enslaved. We're going to be completely extinct by this year." I don't think that's going to happen. I think we need to realize that before 1492, before Columbus's exploration into America, the only populations of white people existed was in Europe. But now, since colonization happened, since the dawn of industrialization, exploration, we have hundreds of millions of Europeans living in Canada, Australia, America. There's some of us living in South Africa, South America, particularly Argentina. You still have Russia and Eastern Europe as well. But it's the idea that we're just on the verge of death and there's nothing that we can do about it. We're going to be extinct. I think you need to shut up with that kind of negative talk. We're going to be fine. As long as we get these birth rates in order. As long as we get these birth rates to go back up. And again, we have to do that. That's a bad trend, and if it keeps going on long enough, yeah, it would lead to our extinction. But I think it's not going to. I don't think that's going to happen. I think we're going to eventually win because I think this neo-Marxist globalist order is finally dying on itself. I think Trump was just the tip of the iceberg. I think the Western world is going to wake up very soon, and we're going to start having good old-fashioned nationalist leaders who put their people first. I know Viktor Orban lost in Hungary, but I think the person who took over is just as right-wing, except for there's some minor differences. But I don't think Hungary is in any jeopardy. I don't think they're going to be allowing any kind of immigration. They're still very hostile to Islam. I think they'll be fine. I think that if I had to predict, I think France is going to go to the far right soon. I think the French Nationalist Party under Marine Le Pen or someone else, I think they're going to take power soon because the Emmanuel Macron's approval ratings are so low. They're under 20%. Mind you, Adolf Hitler's popularity approval rating at the end of the war in 1945, as this country was being split apart by the Soviet Union and America, Hitler's approval rating was 15% at that point. And now we have modern leaders, world leaders across Europe, whose approval ratings are getting close to that 15%. So that's kind of scary. The point that you're less popular than Hitler was at the end of the war. That should tell you that you're not doing a very good job and you're probably going to get voted out in the next election. And I think Keir Starmer is going to get voted out too in the UK. If I had to pick, I think Reform UK is still leading. I think they're still the most popular party, but they're more moderates now. Nigel Farage has kind of been a disappointment to me because I'm a far-right extremist, I guess. Because he's been a disappointment, but he would be miles better than Keir Starmer. I prefer the Restore Britain party to be in control, but even if the Reform UK wins, I think they'd be a million times better than the modern day Labour Party. So, and I think that France is going to go to the Nationalist Party soon. Germany's leader, I can't remember his name, but his popularity rating was really low too. But you know whose popularity rating was in the 90 percentile? Bukele from El Salvador. His approval rating is so high, and the reason is he actually solved crime the best way that we know how, by putting criminals behind bars and not letting violent criminals leave jails. Wow, what a concept. Who would have thought? In America, you can literally murder someone, and then you can be out on bail the next week to murder someone else. And in these liberal cities, you can murder like 30 people, or you can do 30 different violent crimes and still ride a subway bus and have the opportunity to stab someone in the neck. And that's a shame. We need more leaders like Bukele. I think we need to have more violent criminals behind bars for the rest of their life. I think if you killed someone, I don't think that you should ever get released from jail. And then if you rape someone, or if you're a chomo, you should be in jail for the rest of your life. And that's just the bare minimum punishment that I think that you should have. I don't see the value in allowing these people who have taken human life, who have ruined human life, to allow them to go into free society again. If they don't have any understanding that what they're doing is wrong, then you can't trust them in a free society anyway. So that's why the insanity plea doesn't work. Like, it shouldn't work. Like, if you're too insane to know that killing someone on the street is wrong, then I don't care if you're insane or not. Put them in jail or an asylum. It's that simple. We need more jails. We need more prisons. Grow these prisons and do what Bukele is doing in El Salvador. Go through these ghettos, arrest all these violent thugs, and put them in jail. That's how you actually solve the crime rate in this country. And that would involve, and I don't think if there's non-violent criminals, I think you should give them a little bit leniency. Especially when it comes to weed, I don't think there should be any jail time for weed. You still shouldn't do it in public. I think you should be fined. But putting these people in jail is just a waste of space and time. And we should. There's a lot more violent criminals that we need to put in there in their place. Okay. Alright, I don't see anything else I need to comment on today. So, if you have any comments on my video, please let me know below. And until next time, this has been The Student Theologian.